Now, as preparation gears towards Conference of the Parties, similarly known as COP28, a 3-degree Celsius temperature rise by the end of the century has sparked urgent calls for immediate and decisive climate action. The UN Resident Coordinator Matthias Kimmel at the pre-COP28 workshop for journalists on climate change in Abuja advocated for a solutions-focused approach, urging journalists to focus on stories that empower individuals to take action and engage in the green jobs sector. Benedict Oko has more on the story.
Africa contributes the least to climate change but bears the brunt of its consequences. As preparations gears towards COP28, stakeholders have raised concerns for a 3-degree Celsius temperature rise by the end of the century, posing a severe threat to global life. Addressed journalists at the pre-COP28 workshop for journalists on climate change organized by the UN Information Center and the World Meteorological Organization in Abuja, the UN Resident Coordinator, Matthias Schmeil, underscored the critical nature of addressing climate change and the imperative for swift global action. He called for a 45% reduction in emissions by 2030, emphasizing the need for COP28 to be a platform for increased ambition and action.
As it stands, the world is headed for a temperature rise of about 3 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels by the end of this century. This is a hellish scenario that would be detrimental to nearly all forms of life on Earth, including our own. The risks and impacts of climate change can be significantly reduced by lowering greenhouse gas emissions in order to keep global temperature increases below pre-industrial levels. Now, to meet this goal, emissions must fall by 45% in 2030 compared to 2010 levels. However, on the current trajectory that I've indicated, they are set to rise by 9% instead of falling by 45%. So we are really well short of our collective target. And we are, to repeat, failing the most vulnerable people on this planet, including here in Nigeria.
The Director General of Nigerian Meteorological Agency, Mansour Bako Matazu, while highlighting the critical role journalists play, urged them to foster information sharing and empowering communities to understand and address climate change impacts.
The issue of climate change, as we can see, is a social justice issue because the major contributors, which happens to be the advanced nations, do have more comprehensive, adaptive, and mitigative measures. And we contribute in the third world countries to less than 5% of the whole of this emission. We are very much vulnerable to the impacts and effects of this climate. And for us in NIMED over the years, with our 140 years data, we determine and establish that there are local evidences of climate change. And as a result of this, the solution to these local changes of climate should also be localized.
The World Meteorological Organization representative for North, Central and West Africa, Bernard Edward Gomez, on his part, revealed needs to gain increased commitment from countries to accelerate action in tackling the climate crisis.
The role of journalism in addressing climate change cannot be overemphasized. As the foreign state of the realm, journalists have a critical responsibility to inform the public about the realities of climate change. Through the power of storytelling, investigative reporting, and community engagement, that journalism can inform, empower, and hold accountable all stakeholders in the fight against climate change.
Others spoke on the need for a collaborative effort with journalists in shaping a more sustainable and resilient future.
Climate change, like I said earlier on, has come to stay. But when we have predictions, either from NISA or NIMET or any other body in relation to climate change, we are doing. That is why I'm very proud of this word, predictions. We are not God. We can't give perfect predictions.
The workshop aimed to sensitize journalists on climate change issues ahead of COP28, scheduled to take place in Dubai from November 30 to December 12, 2023.